Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome. Today we're going to take a look at Crowbar, the Rangers at Pointe Du Hoc. Now this is set on June 6, 1944. You take charge of the US Rangers as they go up the cliffs and across the point trying to attack and take out German artillery emplacements and all the resistance that they can find there. This of course is as D-Day is going on, the Rangers have to take out these emplacements because they're pouring down fire onto the beachhead as the US forces invade. Let's take a look at what's inside and offer up some thoughts on gameplay. As we start out here, I just wanted to mention this is a game I knew nothing about. I hadn't heard of this game. It is a review copy provided by Flying Pig Games. But as I've looked through the rules and looked over all the components and things like that, I will say that I'm very excited to play it. It seems like a game that I feel like I'm really going to enjoy digging into. And of course, we here have a picture. This again capturing the Rangers taking the cliffs and going above the cliffs at Pointe Du Hoc during D-Day in June 6th, 1944. Their goal is to take out the find and take out the artillery emplacements, and you'd be commanding 3 companies of American Rangers as they go up the cliffs. So let's take a look at briefly on the back side here. Our kind of overall components, our kind of overall game range. Says age 14 plus. I'll talk more about the complexity inside as we take a look at the rules. There is a lot going on here. It doesn't feel overly complex, but there's been a lot of, I think, cool, fun mechanics added to the game that make me think, oh wow, that's going to be fun to dig into that. I feel like they've fleshed out the gameplay in a way that looks really rich. Players is 1 to 3, but I think to be clear, its strength is a solitaire game. Now, you have a 2-player co-op mode, there's a 3-player co-op mode. I think those will work really well. So like the 3-player co-op mode, each one commands one of the 3 US companies. And there's also some variants in there where you can play contested, or you can play not so co-op, where one of you controls the German forces against one of the other companies and things like that. So there's some variants on there, but the heart of the game to me seems to be single-player solo or 2-player or 3-player co-op solo. That's, I think, really the richness is going to be. Playing time says 1 to 3 hours. That feels about right. It's hard to say what they're going to play. There is a good bit going on, but everything's kind of clearly articulated. So I feel like 1 hour feels a little bit short to me, almost like maybe you're just commanding one company, but it feels like you're going to be closer to that 2 to 3 with all the stuff that's in here. So with that being said, let's open it up now and take a look at what's inside. All right, let's jump in and take a look at the rule book. Now, there is a good bit of text here. This is a 27-page rule book. Here is some political background of President Reagan's speech at the location on not on June 6th, but June 6, 1984. Then we come back into a very detailed example of play. Really nice to see. So our rules really extend here. These are the different modes. So those almost aren't rules in themselves. I think we could say, it's fair to say that the rules end here about page 20. These are all the different kind of exceptions that would be used for some of the various co-op modes and stuff like that. And then we get, so really about 20 pages of rules, and counting the first 2 here really aren't much, about 18 pages of rules. But the text here is fairly compact. I do want to say I really appreciate here the layout of the text here in terms of everything's indented. We got nice highlights of what's important and stuff like that. So it's very easy to kind of scan through this and see what's important. And kind of get an idea for, okay, where do I need to read? So I really appreciate this, and lots of examples, even though there's an example, a larger multi-page example at the back of the manual here. The rule book here is really nice too, because it's got lots of examples that are set in there. So you get mini examples as you're reading particular rules. Very clear, very well done. And again, I do really appreciate how we've got indentation, subcategories. It makes finding stuff so much easier. I've been working with a couple of games that have straight columns, and when you see something that's laid out like this, you really appreciate the beauty of something that's got some fine layout here. The rules in of them themselves, the ones that I've read, I haven't read through them all yet. I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through. I've been kind of spot reading some sections, but as I'm reading through them, it's like, yeah, it feels really clear. So I think this is a good solid rule set from what I can tell so far. Again, the test is when you play it, and I will say there's quite a bit of stuff going on here, as we'll talk about as we get into some of the components and things like that. But so far so good. Rule set looks good. Let's take a look now at the counters. Now these are 1-inch counters, and as we see, this is when we look at the map, it's not a hexagonal map. It's a grid. It's a square grid map. And but they're big grids, so it's going to play out on a big scale, really easy to see and maneuver around and things like that. We have again 4 counter sheets. What we're looking at right now are the US forces as well as these emplacement markers. So you don't quite know where the German artillery pieces are going to be, so these are going to be scattered around the map, and you're going to basically find these and uncover them. And if we look on the other side, you're looking for these, I think, which are these artillery pieces. These are other things that can happen. False reports, you get hit by a hand grenade, officer captured, rubble, and things like that. So you're kind of working your way through these different emplacements, and there's more over here to try to find the real ones. But if we look at the U.S. forces here, we can see Easy, Dog, and Fox Company, and they extend a little bit over here as well. The units work on a 10-point strength system, so they start out at 10, and then they're going to be moving down here to 2. The other side has the odd values on them too. So you're basically trying to keep your forces up to strength, move up across those cliffs and inland on the point, and try to reach your objectives, kind of grinding out the victory here. So that's one level of the counters there. And then now here we have the German counters that you're going to be your opponents here. We've got a command bunker, Rommel's planning and things, and very similar, more of the hidden artillery placements there. We've got depleted status as these German forces start to lose strength and things. Dummy guns could be found. So lots of, I feel like the attention to detail in this system has really is very thoughtful, and it feels like everything that's been added is fun. And it's just kind of cool. So here we have a lot of the markers. We get incoming fire for pinned and things like that. These are heroic actions. And so as you look at these things, each one of these things, of course, is connected to a different mechanic in the game. And yet at the same time, reading through the rules, it doesn't seem like it becomes this overwhelming system. It seems like everything's logical, thought out, and works really well. Now, as we look at these here, I'll flip these over. These orange counters here, which we can see, there's 2 different types of events in the game. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the dice too. But these are the ranger events. So these orange ones are ranger events. At certain times during play, you're going to be asked to pick a ranger event. So you're going to pick a chit out of a cup, and it's going to be one of these, like found cover, Force B and C, reinforcements, Easy Company, naval support fire from the USS Texas and stuff like that. But you could also draw a German event chit, in which case we get these things: Hitler's Buzzsaw, Easy Company, Rommel's Planning, Vorsicht, Mines. So we got lots of different things. So there's a dual event system that's represented by these chits, but that's not it. There's also events that come in the form of cards too. Those are a little less, they're a little bit more thematic, a little bit more concentrated in terms of theme. We'll take a look at those as we look at the cards. But we also have landing gear here for coming, because the map is divided up into 3 parts, as we'll see in the ocean and beach is the first 2 parts are going to be there. And then you're going to be activating your companies, parts of your companies during each turn. And so this is going to track whether the unit is activated or whether the rally point is still accessible. It's not been activated yet. So yeah, really cool there. Again, we look at the markers here. Really nice, clear. Of course, these are massive counters, so they're really easy to read. So if your eyesight is an issue, I think this is going to be a game that's pretty friendly to it. Now, let's take a look at the dice. There are 2 bags of dice that came with this. This one, I don't quite know what it does yet. I have an idea, but I'm not quite sure. I think this was a Kickstarter bonus that came with it. But I do want to show the dice here. We have a number of regular 6-sided dice. These are the German 5 6-sided dice. And then we have the 5 US 6-sided dice. So those are rather straight and ordinary. But this is the movement system. So each turn you're going to be activating one of your counters, one of your groups, one of the parts of the companies, their platoons, perhaps the best way to put it. And you start by rolling 1 die. And the green die is the easiest die, which is going to give you the most favorable results. And depending upon what you roll, that's going to tell what happened. And then after you roll the green die, you can roll the next die, which is probably going to be the yellow, because that's the second, that's kind of a cautious one. Then you get, I think red is next, which is risky, and then black is just downright dangerous. So it's just kind of push your luck mechanism. You're trying to get your Rangers to do more and more because you're racing against time, but at the same time, the more you try to have them do in a particular activation, the more risky it gets and the more likely you are to suffer casualties because you're pushing forward an aggressive advance. So this really seems like a really cool mechanic to really kind of bring in a component of gameplay. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of push your luck mechanics, but this feels really well done because it feels like it makes a lot of sense. You can either be aggressive, move your forces forward and take a lot of risks, or you can be more cautious, which puts you at risk of not being able to accomplish your goals in time. So I really like at least the idea here on how this is done for this one. I can see that making for lots of interesting decisions during gameplay. Now, there are 2 event deck cards. I think this one here is the Kickstarter event deck, which adds some more components to this. So we're going to put that one to the side and take a look at these. So in addition to those event chits that I mentioned, you've also got this here, which these are the regular event cards. So different die roll modifiers, different results on the dice are going to ask you to draw these. And then this is how time increments forward in the game. Or it could also trigger a buildup of the German counterattack, or to when your relief column comes and takes relief of your Ranger forces. So this is kind of, this event system to me, not really playing it yet, I'm not 100% sure, but it feels like this is the way time advances forward in the game and starts to put pressure on you. So this can increment time by 2, by 1. So this is kind of your ticking clock, if you would, that's going to force you to keep going forward. So it seems like a really clever and original system to build into a game. So with that being said, let's now take a look at our player aids. We got our player aids and our maps yet to go. There are 3 player aids. One is an explanation. This is the explanation in detail of all the events, chits in the game. So these, again, the orange ones are the Ranger ones. And then if we look here, this is a detailed explanation of the German events here. So we've got both of those articulated in the game here like this. So this is really clean, really helpful. I can see this being good when you draw that chit to be able to figure out what you're supposed to do with it. So that looks really good. Then this other player aid, again, this is a kind of a thinner card stock like the other one over here too. This one here is kind of a detailed sequence of play with some kind of rules on close combat, highly frequently accessed rules and things like that. So this seems like it's going to be really helpful for play too. I could see that once you get through the rules and kind of read through them, you can kind of pretty much use this to build through your sequence of play and the high frequency rules and things like that. Like here's an explanation of open fire combat, German counterattacks and how they word commander bonuses, because this can trigger too. You're kind of hoping the German counterattack could come and then you're going to have to deal with that. So lots of little things that are thrown in there, I think, to keep the gameplay with a lot of variety in things. Okay. Third and final player aid. This is more a player track, I guess, than a player aid. And I'll show a zoomed out version of this too. This is how you're keeping track again of the time on that relief column track, German counterattack, and then the increment when you draw those cards. So I think what happens is you draw those event cards, and those are going to move forward the counters, the trackers here on there. And you get 3 days again that the scenario goes. It is, it's going to run up from June 6th, June 7th to June 8th. Now this right-hand side is where you're tracking victory points. The game victory level is determined by your victory points, and your victory points are determined by capturing German guns, fortunes of war prizes. Sometimes when it looks like you get to one of those gun emplacement places, you might find something instead of a gun emplacement, in which case that could trigger some victory points here. And then you lose points by Ranger casualties, and then some other things here. German POWs, roadblocks at the end of the game, timely relief, no units lost at the end of the game, some different bonuses. And this is where you're going to have a 10s counter and a 1s counter to keep track of your victory points and your ultimate victory level to see how you did as leader of the US Rangers at Pointe Du Hoc. Now, let's take a look at the map. I think this sticker here, because this is a dice representation, you can keep them there in order. So green, yellow, red, black, black most risky, and green less risky. I think this is a map correction because as we'll see when I pull this out, these colors look different than this. So I think this is a sticker you put on the map and then cut to make it work. So let's take a look at the map now. I'll show a zoomed out version of this and we can see just how big everything is here. So this is a 22 by 34 inch map, and the zoomed out version is probably the best thing for us to look at now as we take a look at this. We can see at the southern end here, and I will show this, or this actually would be the northern end geographically, right? Thinking about the Normandy beaches. Here we have what we're going to put all the landing craft. This is that die roll thing that needs to be replaced. And then as the forces go forward, they've got to move into the beaches here, and we can see we've got now our beach landing zones. And again, this is a square grid, and we can see the divider here between the beaches and getting up on the cliffs. And there's a whole mechanic and play system for how the Rangers get from the beach up onto the cliffs, which is really cool. Now each one of these squares here is about 1 5/8 inches wide. So again, with inch counters, and there is no stacking too of units. I mean, there can be times when you're going to have more than one counter in a hex for things like close combat and some markers and things like that. But it's one combat unit per square. So there's not going to be a big pile of units. I think it's going to visually play really clean with the way you play this game. And then once the units get up onto the cliffs, this is where the combat really happens. So you're kind of going up against Germans, and we can see all kinds of different things in here. Gun emplacement, casements, there's all kinds of different little features here to make the map, make you feel like you're actually there. We get the craters and things like that. And again, this is going to be peppered with a lot of those German gun emplacements, and you're going to be hunting through these. And the way it works is that each platoon in a company is going to be moving up one of their rows. And so they're kind of responsible for one row. And there are 3 companies. So we've got, I think it's Easy, Fox, Dog. I'm not sure which one they go at offhand here. It probably says somewhere. But each one is going to be responsible for 4 columns on this map. So you're going to have 4 for one company, 4 for another company, and 4 for another company. And you're trying to push these columns up through the point here to kind of accomplish your missions. So it's going to be kind of a really cool game, I think, where you kind of start here again at the ocean level, try to get onto the beach, try to get up the cliff, and then establish some points and say security points on the cliff, and then push forward as far as you can go and as fast as you can go. Nice mounted thick map board too, so it looks like it's going to be pretty durable. And with that, we have taken a look at Crowbar Pointe Du Hoc. Let me know what you think. Have you played the game? I'm curious if anyone's played it. Again, I mentioned this is a game I didn't know very much about until it arrived. I'm really looking forward to playing it. I will be bringing some gameplay of this to the channel very shortly. And if you did like this one or have this one, you might also be interested in taking a look at the expansion, Vorwärts, which allows you to play from the German side. So I'll put a link to that unboxing as soon as it's ready. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.